Hey everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. Last week I was talking to somebody who brought up a What's Up Wednesday I did in the past concerning personal protective equipment, or PPE for short. And I wanted to kind of touch base on that topic again because I think it's probably timely based on the discussion I had. So a couple things around PPE. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that PPE is always the last resort. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But it's critical that employers do what's called a hazard assessment for PPE. And to do that, they really need to start off taking a hazard inventory. And what a hazard inventory is, also known as a job risk assessment, is taking an inventory of all the different tasks that are performed within the organization and the risks associated with those. In order to develop a prevention plan, you need to know the hazards. So a hazard inventory basically is a listing of all the different tasks and activities and safeguards against the different hazards associated. Oftentimes you'll see a JHA, a job hazard analysis, that is templated to specific tasks. That's an example of a documentation of a hazard assessment. Secondly, I think it's important to realize that in order to use PPE as a solution to a hazard, you have to have that job risk assessment done. And obviously, as I mentioned before, PPE is always our last resort. So what should we do before we use PPE? Obviously, the first thing would be to engineer the hazard out so it doesn't exist. That's always our number one option. Number two is we would want to substitute or separate. So if you're using a chemical, substitute for something that's less hazardous. If you have a fall hazard, put a barricade up to separate the hazard from the worker. Thirdly, administrative controls. That's a wide range of topic around trying to protect it through policy, trying to protect against the hazard through policy, I should say. And then finally, our last resort would be PPE. If we were to take a look at a respiratory hazard and we went to the SDS safety data sheet of the product that we were using, and it identified that in order to wear respiratory protection, you needed to wear full face applied air as an example. That's based on a set of variables. And it's critical that as an employer, we don't just take that at face value and utilize that level of protection, because there are too many different things that could change. And as a result of that, we really need to do a hazard assessment, which is air sampling on the actual exposure before we can assign respiratory protection as a solution. So when we look at PPE, again, it's a last resort and it has to be prescribed based on the hazard assessment that we do. So keep those things in mind. Hopefully you find that valuable. Drop us a comment if you have a question, and we'll see you next Wednesday.